On April 30th, 1945, before taking his own life, Adolf Hitler and his mistress Eva Braun burned all their documents, pictures, everything. Hitler wanted nothing to remain behind him. At that time, no one knew what had happened in the bunker before Hitler's death. But now, 70 years later, due to a French officer, Commandant Raymond Rose, who is no longer in this world, and a private collector, some new political and personal documents of Hitler have emerged. These unique documents, which have come to light for the first time, provide an opportunity to understand some crucial moments of Hitler's final days more clearly. What was the atmosphere in the bunker like so? Why did Hitler marry Eva Braun just 24 hours before his death? Which close associate betrayed Hitler in the last 10 days of his life? When was the decision made in which he planned to take his own life? And most importantly, what was the thing that led the Allied forces to determine that this dead body was indeed Hitler's? After Hitler's death, everyone was trying to see and understand the bunker. On November 25th, 1945, Commandant Raymond Rose, who was a French officer, went inside the bunker. There were 26 steps leading into the bunker, which led to a dark room. There, he saw a dark and filthy room where papers were scattered everywhere, furniture was overturned, and candle wax was lying around. Rose found some documents that shed new light on Hitler's final days. These documents reveal that Hitler was steadfast in his decision until the end and was seeking victory for himself even in his death. Just 10 days before Hitler's death, the Nazi Germany dream, which was once envisioned to rule the world, had now become just a dream. Hitler's empire, which was once one of the most powerful empires in the world and a thorn in the side of the Western powers, was now counting its final moments. Berlin, which was Hitler's dream and the center of power, had turned into a pile of rubble. Everywhere there was a scene of destruction, fear, and death. The bombs of the Allied forces were exploding all around, and the Red Army was only 100 kilometers away. Hitler, who was about to become the target of his own hunt, was now hiding in the darkness of a bunker that was built 7 meters underground near the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. This was no ordinary bunker. It was designed to be very strong and bomb-proof according to the design of Albert Speer, who was Hitler's personal architect. It was originally built in 1936, but after Allied bombings became more dangerous in 1943 and 1944, it was further reinforced. This bunker was called the Führer bunker in the German language. Führer means leader, so it was the leader's bunker. This was the bunker where Adolf Hitler, who dreamed of ruling the entire world, was hiding, and it was here that he spent the last days of his life. The atmosphere of the bunker was very depressing, with silence, thick concrete walls, cold and damp conditions, and darkness prevailing. This bunker was like a labyrinth with small corridors and rooms where one would feel suffocated. In this bunker, there was a private space of 3 rooms for Hitler, including a meeting room where he held meetings for his military operations twice daily. There was a small room for Eva Braun, who was his mistress, and they also shared a bathroom. The atmosphere of this bunker was filled with depression and fear. Due to being underground, there was a mechanical ventilation system for air, which constantly made noise. This noise not only caused physical discomfort, but was also a mental torture for those living there. In the last 10 days, Hitler was not only physically, but also mentally broken. He had developed Parkinson's disease, which causes hand tremors. To hide his condition, he often kept his left hand in his pocket, or positioned it in such a way that others wouldn't notice. In the last 10 days, his hand trembled continuously, and he also had difficulty walking. Doctors said that in the last 10 days, Hitler's face was so pale and tired that he appeared 10 to 15 years older than his age. During those days, any officers who met him were shocked to see his deteriorating health condition. Even Hitler's personal doctor in the bunker, Theodor Morell, administered glucose and Ricomen injections daily, but all this was not enough to improve his health. Hitler losing control over his hand was the biggest evidence of his declining morale. The daily routine in the bunker was extremely boring. Every morning, a military meeting would take place where his generals would inform him about the situation in Berlin. The news of gradually losing control over Berlin was frustrating Hitler. Distrust was inherent in Hitler's nature, meaning he did not easily trust anyone. This was why, even in his final days, he was worried that one of his generals might betray him. And indeed, something like this happened later on. In the final days, when everyone was thinking of fleeing the bunker, Eva Braun stood by Hitler. Eva Braun was Hitler's mistress for 13 years. Although they were not married, she still stayed with Hitler in the bunker. Experts say that staying in the bunker with Hitler was Eva Braun's insistence, and perhaps this was also the reason for Hitler's weakness. Eva was a romantic and emotional girl who wanted to stay with Hitler until the end. Some letters of Eva were found after that she had written to her friends. It was only after reading these letters that some insight into the private life of Hitler and Eva could be gained. The purpose of Eva's life was to be with Hitler. In one of her letters, she wrote that this place is very frightening, but I am happy here because Hitler is with me. Inside the bunker, Eva's daily routine was very limited. She often spent time in her room, arranging her photographs, or sometimes having coffee with Hitler. But one thing that can be understood from her letter is that Eva Braun felt very lonely. This letter not only shows Eva's love and loyalty, but also reveals her inner fear and loneliness. Speaking of the conditions outside the bunker, in the last 10 days, Berlin had turned into a battlefield. Allied bombers were dropping bombs on Berlin every day and at night. The Red Army, which was the military of the Soviet Union, was fighting Hitler's army just a few kilometers away at the border of Berlin. Undoubtedly, Hitler's army had around 900 tanks and nearly 500,000 German soldiers to keep Berlin safe at that time. But despite all this, Nazi Germany's forces were faltering. Hitler, who had dreamed of ruling here for 1,000 years, was now visibly failing. The people of Berlin were trying to save their lives by hiding in bunkers and under roofs. On the other hand, only Nazi propaganda and music were being broadcast on the radio. In no time, the Red Army soldiers defeated the German forces all around the outskirts of Berlin. A German soldier recounted that when he returned to Berlin, it was difficult for him to recognize the city because there were piles and piles of rubble everywhere. This was the time when even the German army began to see the end of Hitler's leadership. A few days before Hitler's death, another drama unfolded. Hermann Göring, who was the chief of the German Air Force in the Nazi regime, expressed his intention to seize power. Hermann Göring was a close associate of Hitler, to whom Hitler had given various positions. In 1933, Hitler appointed him in charge of the Air Ministry. In 1935, as the commander-in-chief of the German Air Force, and in 1936, the person in charge of the Air Force, who was appointed to boost Germany's economy. And then, in 1941, Hitler appointed Hermann Göring as his successor and deputy, meaning that after Hitler, Göring was to take control. Göring believed that Hitler was stuck in Berlin and that leadership control should now come into his hands. He sent a telegram to Hitler in which he wrote that if Hitler could no longer make decisions, he should officially transfer leadership. Upon seeing this telegram, Hitler, who was already quite depressed, became furious with anger. He removed Göring from all positions and declared him a traitor, issuing orders for his arrest. Later, Hermann Göring was arrested and sentenced to death. But just a few hours before his execution, he took poison and ended his own life. On one hand, the Red Army was advancing into Berlin, and on top of that, Hitler's close associate committed treason. This entire situation was forcing Hitler to do things he had never even imagined. It was April 29, 1945. Hitler called the people around him and said that the time had come. At 1 o'clock at night, he officially married his longtime mistress, Eva Braun. This wedding took place in the same bunker, in front of 2 or 3 officers. After getting married, he called his secretary and asked her to write his will, in which Hitler's words were that Eva and I have chosen death. For us, death is better than the shame of surrendering. Unfortunately, this marriage lasted only 1 day. On April 30th, 1945, at 3 in the afternoon, Hitler poisoned his dog named Blondie and went into the room with Eva exactly 24 hours. After the wedding, both ended their lives in the room. Hitler took his life with a pistol, while Eva embraced death by consuming a cyanide capsule. The bunker staff had prior instructions, so they took both bodies to the courtyard and set them on fire. Hitler did not want to leave any trace behind. Before their deaths, both burned documents and their photographs, and finally ordered themselves to be burned as well. This all indicates that until his dying breath, Hitler did not want to surrender himself to his captors, so much so that Soviet soldiers could not capture his body and display it to the world as a trophy. This is why he ordered his body to be burned. When the Red Army reached the bunker, they found only charred remains, but it was determined after extensive investigation that these were Hitler's. This was discovered when they took a ton samples of Hitler's teeth. Hitler had a strong aversion to visiting the dentist, so he had a very unique gold bridge made that supported his broken teeth. It was through this bridge that Hitler's body could be identified. We hope you will also like and share this video wholeheartedly. Thank you very much for your loving comments. See you in the next amazing video.